So we need to revisit this story. Bank for International Settlements outlining the next steps to promote the adoption of ISO. Why would they be doing this? I think it's because Federal Reserve banks here in the United States, they have until March 10th of this year before the ISO messaging standard is implemented throughout the entire country. Clearly, for us, this means we need to act now. And I discovered some new information about the connection between ISO and all of these crypto projects that is going to blow your mind. Longtime viewers and listeners know I'm not playing when I say that. Now, let me introduce myself because we got quite a bit to go over. My name is Wade. You're listening to another edition of the DHN Crypto Podcast. I've been here since 2019, and I've researched over 1,000 digital assets. Now, the main reason I sit here is to share all of this knowledge with the people of the world because it's not being talked about, at least not properly. All I'm asking in return is that you hit that subscribe button. I got a goal this year, 100K by the end of the year. I totally think that's possible. I watch it happen all the time. But we'll get more into that at the end. Let's dive into this. In case you missed the episode on it prior, I believe that was Friday, the Bank for International Settlements, through the Committee on Payment and Market Infrastructures, essentially guides G20 nations towards the harmonization of ISO 20022. January 7th, they hit us with this press release here that contained 3 steps to this process. Step 1, maintain the harmonized data requirements at least through the end of 2027. So that gives us a timeline here. The committee, step 2, will also encourage the industry to develop global ISO market practice guidelines for instant payments based on the harmonized data requirements. So when they talk about encouraging the industry, players that we are very familiar with, right? Further emphasized in step 3, the CPMI will take to engaging with payment system operators and payment service providers. They wrote that very strange there, and encourage them to implement the harmonized data requirements by the end of 2027. So this is, again, going to be a very spoken about subject over the next few months. That is why I want you to have the best understanding when these things start coming at you. Another reason I love the community that we have here. Quite possibly the greatest group of researchers, crypto researchers I have ever been pleasured to know. One of you sent me this. This is a chart over the last 60 days or so of the following assets from bottom going up: Chainlink, Quant, XDC, Algo, XRP, Stellar, and Hadera. We shouted it out a couple weeks back as things were rallying, as these were being the top performing assets on the market. Well, someone actually sent me the evidence. So clearly, we need to act now on this new information that I'm going to share with you in this episode. So I want to jump to a clip here. This is EBA Clearing. They're hosting EBA Day. But check this out, guys. This is from 2018 and is discussing the importance of ISO 20022 and those almighty APIs that I keep referring to that are also mentioned here in these next couple paragraphs, where they will say the growing use of application programming interfaces and the adoption of ISO financial messaging standard have opened up new possibilities to facilitate payment system interlinking. It's the APIs. Keep that in mind. Now, we're going to break this clip down into 2 sections. First bit is going to be about 1.5 minutes. We're hearing from Paul Ruskin. He runs Trace Finance, if I'm not mistaken, and they develop a tool called a transformer. It's for businesses, not really crypto related. But what he has to say about the adoption of ISO and the use of APIs back in 2018 says a lot. Let's check it out.
Welcome to FinExtra. I'm Josie Waite, and I'm here at EBA Day 2018 in Munich. And joining me now is Paul Ruskin from Trace Financial, and we're talking about ISO 20022 and APIs. Thank you so much for joining me, Paul.
Thank you.
How important is it to look at ISO 20022 standard and API networks jointly, and why?
The interesting thing that I've discovered over the last couple of years is there are 2 very significant trends in the payments world. One is the adoption and the migration to the ISO 20022 standard, And the second is the increase of use in APIs, not only from tier one banks and institutions, but also the new players coming into the market in the mobile world and the mobile banking. We're now seeing those two trends collide and people needing these APIs with the 20022 standard.
What is driving this?
The main drivers are payment initiatives around the world. Initiatives such as the Australian New Payment Platform, Canada's Links project, and even last week I was reading a white paper from the Bank of England and their migration to 20022. Couple this with the API development and the ease of use of these APIs and people wanting small, lightweight, easily configurable solutions, and the PSD2 initiative with open banking, it's caused a perfect storm with both of them arriving at the same time and needing to be done at the same time as well.
So that obviously tells us there has been a strong appetite for APIs that can suit these, at that time, coming messaging standards. It's been since 2018. So that is the direction that we need to go, which brings us to Stellar Lumens. Now, I found this neat little article here that gives us a top 10 of Stellar blockchain APIs published by CoinMonks. They got some crazy content on Medium, man. I would definitely recommend. But let's stay focused here. So, key features of Stellar. They go into those. Obviously, we are familiar with them. Transaction fees, very low. Foreign currency transfers, micropayments, anchors, so forth and so on. Smart contracts. Let's get down to the APIs, right? It's one in particular I want to show you. There's Anchor there. I told you, Anchor is everywhere when it comes to APIs. The one that I want to show you, though, is down here. Quick node. You see that Stellar REST API and Json RPC? Now, I promise you I'm not going to get too technical with this. Just know Json RPC, JSON itself, very important to this conversation. Our focus, though, specifically is ISO. We see Stellar can do APIs, but what about ISO specifically? Well, there was a company that joined the Stellar Lumens ecosystem back in 2023, March 22nd, no less. BP announces ISO support for the Stellar blockchain and Circle USDC. So that calls to the Interledger Protocol family photo. Just got strong confirmation on that. But in revisiting this article, this section stood out to me even stronger with this information. BPV has developed ISO support for Stellar standardized KYC rails, which were implemented via Stellar ecosystem proposals. Now, payments and other asset transfers will be able to leverage the benefit of Stellar, such as 5-second settlement, low fees, and immediate finality, while at the same time processing all transaction metadata according to the new ISO standard. This next piece goes to explain that same functionality extends to transactions involving USDC on the Stellar blockchain as well. So, through the use of an API developed by BP Ventures, they were able to connect to the Stellar network. So where else are we seeing this? Let's talk a little bit about XRP. Now, originally, when looking into this information, years ago, it was the real-time payments group that was the source of who was more closely associated with ISO. Well, you guys see it just like I'm looking at it. It's not active any longer, and all the related content has been archived. Why is that? Well, I had to do a little bit of more digging around. Stumbled upon this pretty page here, APIs and ISO 20022 standards for web-based APIs and financial services. You scroll down and you can clearly see when APIs are implemented as part of an ecosystem, ISO 20022 can add value by providing the common business process data semantics to be used in those API-based exchanges. And then they also going to mention this here, which I should have highlighted, can do it now. In 2018, members of the RMG produced a white paper describing how to transform ISO 20022 message level data to JSON syntax. There's that JSON connection. Again, don't worry, I'm going to bring it all around to you. So, associated with this information was a new list. Whole new list, ladies and gentlemen. API SEG member list courtesy of ISO 20022. And let's scroll through, see if we see any familiar names. EBA Clearing, shout out to them. Clearly, they've been around for a minute now. Oh, what do we have here? Ripple. Shout out to Ripple, just sticking around just sticking around, man, making sure that they hit all the boxes. Now, a secondary player in Ripple's ecosystem is a company named Balante Technologies, and they made a lot of noise a few years ago with this ISO service here. And you'd be surprised, probably not at this point, but what do they use to connect companies to their system? You can use our low-code platform, our API-based service, or a combination of both to make the most of ISO. Are you seeing the pattern here? It's the APIs that are the most crucial piece to the connecting of any network to these ISO syntaxes. But I got a little bit more for you. That's Ripple, the company. We love to talk about XRP, the ledger. And back in 2022, recently updated 3 months ago, but I remember when this relationship was formed, it came out of a hackathon that was being held and sponsored by Ripple. Company, Crypto ISO Interop, they developed the ability for these syntaxes to be read on the XRP ledger. So, zooming out quickly, Ripple has the ability to offer the ability to read these syntaxes through their financial products. Stellar, through BP Ventures, has the ability to offer the reading of these messages through their products. We already know XDC, through what was formerly known as Impel, has another ISO API. So, if we are putting a list together, so far, looks like XDC, Stellar, XRP. That's good, right? But another name that's brought up a lot is Hadera. Let's talk about that a little bit. So, when it comes to Hadera, I think it all boils down to not the network itself, but the companies using it. That was my first assumption. Then I stumbled upon this. So, you can go over to docs.hadera.com. You can fish through their documentation. This is for the real deep technical information about how these networks work behind the scenes. They added an AI feature to this. So clearly, I asked the question, can Hadera process ISO 20022 syntax? And in 6.5 seconds, it came back with yes. Hadera can process ISO 20022 syntax, according to the knowledge sources provided. Hadera is actually one of 7 DLT technologies that adhere to ISO 20022 standards. So I'm like, that is mind-blowing. And then they give me a link to where that information can be found in the glossary. And wouldn't you know it, right under ISO is a Json RPC relay. Now, like I said, I am still reading up on my developer information, but what I'm understanding already is that this JSON is very powerful and very important. And at the end of this video, I got one more piece of information for you that is going to knock your socks off. But we see it here, JSON, ISO, Hadera network. So there's your confirmation there. We were talking about the Fed though, right? To my knowledge, there is one company that when the Fed announced FedNow, that large payment system, there's only one company that made their showcase roster list, right? That company is named Drop. So it had me thinking, like I said, initially going into this, I'm thinking it wouldn't be the network itself for Hadera, but the companies using the network. So I fish around here, Drop's got a few APIs, and what's the one that they accept? JSON payloads and returns JSON responses. So there's clearly a very important relationship between APIs, JSON, and ISO messaging. So when it comes to some sort of definitive list, wait, before we close this out, let's finish the clip here, because he's going to explain a lot more about this JSON ISO API relationship.
How are and how should financial institutions be responding to these developments?
The interesting aspect of these two initiatives, 20022 is meant to be a very simple structure, but it's very rich. It's much richer than the original proprietary messages, such as SwiftMT, for remittance information, name and address. So the idea there is to make it simpler. What most people think, and me included after a few years, was that the 20022 standard is actually based on XML, that's its native language, when actually it's syntax neutral, which means JSON can be used for an ISO 20022, and for APIs, that is its base language. If you want to use an API, you use JSON. So the idea now for financial institutions and these new players in town are actually using APIs with JSON and ability to use the ISO 20022 tags involved with it. Using Transformer, we give the 20022 library, but the ability for your business analyst developers to create and, more importantly, maintain these mappings as either consuming or producing this 20022 structure as JSON or XML, meaning you can tell your customers, you can give it to us in any format, we will consume that, transform it into 20022, and either produce that as XML or produce that as JSON.
So, did you hear how he clarified the importance of JSON in that relationship? He went into explaining what his product offered, but keep in mind, this is 2018. 2018, ladies and gentlemen. Imagine what has been done since then. Here's the clincher, though. I had to ask the question, how many cryptocurrencies use JSON format? Like I said, still learning the proper languages. I may not have described that properly, but Google handled it. So it's difficult to say exactly how many cryptocurrencies use JSON, but virtually all major cryptocurrencies utilize JSON format for their API documentation or communications, making it the dominant standard for data exchange between cryptocurrency platforms. So, wouldn't that imply that any of these networks could be ISO compatible? It does to me. And if that's the case, then here's the point that you should take away from this episode. The harmonization of ISO 20022 will create the financial landscape where the utility on networks like Stellar, XRP, and Ripple can truly thrive. It will force traditional financial institutions to update to meet the standards. That will create an appetite for instant payments, faster payment systems, and everything that comes with it. Things that are right now being developed on our favorite blockchain networks. So, like I said, back then when this all first came out, I was one of those guys too that was, oh, it's a list, follow the list. But nothing is ever that easy, y'all. Y'all know that. Nothing is ever that easy. So I'm glad I was able to put the time in to piece this puzzle together, because now knowing this, you should look at it like this. Because how the market has defined this ISO transition will automatically benefit XRP, Stellar, Hadera, Algorand, as we are seeing in the data. Numbers don't lie. That means I ain't got to say nothing else. So make sure you download your blockchain starter kit for 2025, folks. All right. It'll give you everything that you need to know to navigate this space effectively. 5 verticals of blockchain, the adoption model, which let's just plug in the pieces here. We covered a lot of companies in this one. So you can say the independent organization would be BP Ventures. Let's use the Stellar example, BP Ventures. Third-party tech provider, Stellar Development. There isn't a financial service provider, so we take them 2 pieces, plug it into the blockchain network, which would be the Stellar network. They come out with the completed blockchain application, in this case, new feature in the ISO readability. For Ripple would be the independent organization. Balante would be the third-party tech provider. And because I forgot to mention this, Balante also has a relationship with FedNow. You could plug in FedNow as being the financial service provider. And the blockchain network that they decided to run this through is the one that Ripple uses, and the one that Ripple uses is the XRP ledger. Thus, we have a new application that can read ISO messaging. Or we flip it, do the inverse. Crypto ISO interop, third-party tech provider, the independent institution in this case, the XRP ledger, come together on top of the ledger to create the ISO interop application. I really want people to understand that, because the conversation about utility sometimes can get out of hand. And if you come across this channel, I just want you to have the real perspective, simply. So with that, links to all of this stuff, man, will be in the description as well as the pinned comment. And with that, y'all know what time it is. If that money is digital, so is the hustle.